All right, for my next project, or I should say my next vehicle project, I want something pretty basic because I've got some really big involved projects coming up and I want to do something simple before I dive into those. And how about a rabbit? Let's do a rabbit. It's pretty dusty. Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works, and it's new project day. And normally new project day we're going to take an extensive look at the kit that we're going to be building, but I have done a review of this kit, and there's been lots of reviews online, and a fair number of people have built these. So this is basically what's Dan going to do with it type video. If you want to see my review, it should be up around here. Will be the link. And of course, people who do not reside in the US or Canada are looking at this, and you're probably already starting to say, but it's a Golf! It's a Golf! You're right, it's a Golf. The Volkswagen Golf was sold here in North America as the Rabbit, and I suppose to me and most other people who, were aware of vehicles at the time, were always going to think of the first generation as being the Rabbit. Actually, I think the second generation that was kind of blobbed out was called the Rabbit as well. But at any rate, I'm picking this one because I don't want a really involved model. I might do something a little different with it, but it's not going to be anything serious. I'm not going to turn it into a pickup truck or an off-roader or something like that. It is going to be a little individualized. So, like I said, this shouldn't be an involved build, and I am looking forward to it. If you've seen recent Revell manuals, you'll know this is, a fairly extensive book. It's got 19 steps, including the basic paint and things like that. Seems like an awful lot. AMT would do this like in about 3 steps. So, and if memory serves, this comes with the parts to make a right-hand drive version. And it's got some other small options in it that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a small car kit. So we've got our body. Now, transparencies are bagged up separately. Like I said, if you want an in-depth look at the parts, you can go look at my review on the subject, which I believe over 3,000 people have seen that video, maybe more. I know the guy that edited these will put it up on the screen and show how many people have watched the video of the review. So, this is going to be the next vehicle project, the Volkswagen Rabbit. Surprise, surprise, we're starting off with the engine and the transaxle. And it's a surprisingly complex assembly, all things considered. But I think that's a reflection of the kit and how much more that kit makers put into their vehicle kits or their automotive kits than they used to. I've got the first couple of sub-assemblies done here for the engine, and I'm going to be painting them in stages rather than sticking it all together, just because painting is going to be a little bit easier. This is quite the detailed little engine assembly. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of room for painting various bits differently, so I want to make sure I do a good job on it. So I'll be painting the block and the transaxle and the pan, and then I'm going to be adding other parts on top of it. I have a start on painting the underside, and I'm using Model Master Gunship Gray. I was going to use Neutral Gray, which is what I habitually use for the underside of cars, but I just felt that since this car is late 70s and is moving into a time where they were actually paying attention to rough proofing, I wanted to go with a darker, more of a tarry type of undercoating, just because automakers are finally starting to pay attention to this. They haven't got it right yet, 40 years later, but they were at least starting to pay attention to it. The wheel wells are going to be a flat black, and the fuel tank, just got to do a little bit of research. I think on a Rabbit, it still would have been a metal fuel tank. Because of the way this model goes together, with the engine fitting into this kind of sub-engine bay, basically you put together the whole, power egg, so to speak, and then you put it in something like that. You have to decide early on what color you're going to paint it, because before you can do any major assembly work in here, you need to have it painted. So I have to decide what color I want to paint the car. I'm not going with the dark blue, although that would look good. I definitely want a solid color, not a metallic. I seem to recall, and a look online of Volkswagen Rabbits confirmed that a lot of the colors had basic solid colors. I've decided to go with yellow. It's a very happy little car, and that's a very happy color. So that's what I'm going to be going with, is yellow. And a little bit of this is me wanting to get on with things. I'm not working tonight, so I would like to be able to keep working on this tomorrow. So I need to get this painted, and I'm planning on using Tamiya's lemon yellow, and that's the same color that I used on the pickup truck cab, and I like it here. I didn't like it on my Lockheed Vega, but I like it here. So I am going to be using this airbrushed, but I do have a little bit in a spray can. So to confirm that it's the same color, this stick I just quickly sprayed using the Tamiya basic yellow, and the very, very tip is from the bottle, and it's close. I'm assuming it's supposed to be the same color. I know it looks a little bit darker, but you have to realize that I didn't achieve a super solid coating on here. So I'm going to give the engine bay a couple shots of Tamiya spray yellow out of the can, and within a few hours that'll be dry enough for me to actually work on it and progress with this, and I can do the body a little bit later at my leisure, and I'm going to be using the bottle for that. As you can see, I've got the engine bay pre-painted yellow. I'm going to scuzzy it up quite a bit later, but for now, you can see that the brake booster and the brake reservoir has been glued in place. There's more parts to go in here. If you look down here, you can see these little pegs. They're what the engine and transmission assembly is going to be mounting on. And the engine is coming along. Let's get a focus on here. You can see we've got the alternator in place. We've got the belt assembly on. I'm assuming that the timing belt would be behind here. The distributor has been painted yet. I've already drilled the holes for the spark plug wires. They're the next thing I'm going to be doing. On the other side, you can see the exhaust. I don't want to say manifold, because it's not really, I mean it is, but it's more of separate pipes coming out, not like the heavy cast iron thing that you oftentimes find on cars. This is a lot more dainty. These are white because there's obviously more has got to be glued on there. The other pipes coming up. I checked online, and Volkswagen Rabbits had a metal fuel tank. They weren't plastic at that point. So I've basically painted it up as steel with, actually I think I used aluminum, and the straps themselves were painted steel with a little bit of a rubber bushing in there. There's not much more going on here until more parts are added, such as the rear suspension. I'm ready to bring together some sub-assemblies here. Of course, we've got our inner engine bay right here with the fenders and everything like that. I've got the radiator here. There we go. The camera's taking its time to focus on it. Now, the unpainted bit there, that's not going to show. What's really nice is the other side here. You can see the electric fan and the motor and the shroud and everything like that. Now, I remember a lot of these early electric fans, the blades were kind of a translucent plastic color, so I actually used Tamiya Sky for that. And I always remember the early electric fans looked really cheap and not up to the job. I'm sure they were. And it's funny how just painting them black now, or just making them out of black plastic, seems to make them look a whole lot more capable. But anyway, here's our radiator assembly, which is really, really nice. And of course, we've got our basic engine ready to go here. Still have to put the air filter and air intake and everything on it. You can see we've got the oil filter on the front. That's orange because of Fram. And you can see we've got the spark plug wires in place. And don't bother lecturing me, and I've got the firing order wrong. I don't care. I'm just glad there's wires there. So, this is ready to go in. Well, despite all the parts that I've already got crammed in here, I've got a bunch more to go in. Here's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts that have got to go into our engine compartment. And there's at least 3 more hoses that have got to go in there. The engine bay of this model is really quite intricate, and I think is probably one of the high points of the kit. Okay, that's approximately 30 pieces in place to make up our engine bay. This piece here isn't glued in yet. I'm going to pop him out. This appears to be the air intake for the heater core, and I haven't glued it on yet, just mainly so that I have access to the back of the exhaust manifold, because it needs to be glued in after this is glued to the chassis. And our chassis, or floor pan here, it's got the rear suspension is glued in place now. You can see part of the exhaust is in, and this piece of the exhaust goes from here, and it wraps up inside the engine bay. So the engine bay is going to be the next thing that gets glued into our chassis here. And it needs to go on before I can do the front suspension. And there's our engine bay attached to our underframe. Now, if I turn it around this way, you can see that there's actual mounting guides right here that this fits hard up against. I'm glad those are there. Everything seems to line up all right. But the last thing you're going to want is for this to be slightly off and you not be able to put your body on. I'm assuming that Revell has done their homework properly, and this will all line up. I'm hoping. We will see. So, certainly is a busy assembly down there. Alright, for those of you who are going to be building this sort of kit in the future, or this kit in the future, I just want to call your attention to 2 things. The first is, it's tough to see, but if you look down, you can see there's kind of a triangle with a hole in it down there. There's another one in this corner, and then there's a lip running across the engine bay at the front. And that is actually part of this piece right here. So I went ahead and I pre-painted the engine bay, but I didn't realize that there a little bit of that was going to show after I glued this on. So I had to thread a paintbrush in there to paint those parts. The other thing is, and I don't yet have the main, it's not a K-member in a front-wheel drive car, but the front subassembly here. You can see that I've got the wheel spindles on, and this kit is designed so that the wheels will steer, which is fine. But if we look at the instructions, you can see that in step number 4, they have you put the exhaust pipe thing together, and then they have you put this together, and then the exhaust goes into the car, then this goes on. And I went and I put this part on first, because it's not like they tell you do one before the other. It's important to do actually this part first, then glue the exhaust on. Because if we look at the part, you can see that the tie rod goes between the exhaust and the underside of the car. Now, even if you're not going to have the steering working so that it can pivot, you still need to get that tie rod underneath there. I ended up cutting my tie rod and slipping it underneath and then gluing it together because I'd already glued on this part here. So I just thought I'd pass that on to you guys so that if you are building this kit, you know that, oopsie, yeah, let's put the tie rod on first, then we'll put the exhaust, because that kind of traps it in place. So I think I'm going to be calling it quits on assembly of our Rabbit for now. Engine compartment is fully assembled. Now it's going to need some weathering, but there's a lot of really awesome detail here. If you've seen anyone else's build of this, but especially nice is the decals for the battery and for some of the other things. There's a warning sticker on the alternator and a few other parts. If you're willing to invest the time, you can really make the engine compartment pretty awesome in here. And there is one more piece that goes on the top, and that is flings it across the room. Piece of dog fur on there. So this goes on there like that, and this is basically the air intake for the heater and everything like that. And I hadn't had it glued on because I wanted to be able to get at the top of the exhaust manifold. The only thing I'd have to say I find lacking in this is I would have appreciated if Revell had have maybe included some metal springs that could have acted as the springs for the McPherson struts, because there should be springs here. Those are McPherson struts. So the underside, as you can see, is quite cool looking. There's not a huge range of movement with the steering front wheels, but that's fine. Now there's still after the last part of the exhaust to go in. That'll go in later. And as well, of course, Revell gives us front disc brakes, which is kind of cool as well. So anyway, I think I've spent enough time on this for this episode. And thanks for watching. Until next time, just keep on modeling.